There are a number of very common expressions today that use the name of God or Jesus in a careless or flippant way. This is known as taking God's name in vain, and generally means using his name in a way that has nothing to do with him, sometimes even as a curse word or expletive. The Bible is very clear that this is wrong. In fact, commandment number 2 of the 10 Commandments is, "Do not take the name of the Lord your God in vain," and defines this type of behavior as blasphemy. The Old Testament was written in Hebrew, so the Hebrew word that is translated as vain in this commandment had a bit of a different meaning. It could actually be translated as either evil, useless, or false. So this gives the commandment a slightly broader definition than it would generally mean today. It not only applies to using God's name as a curse word or as an irreverent or meaningless expression, but also to using it as an oath or something to swear by, which isn't quite as common, but you will still hear people say things like they swear to God or something like that. In Old Testament times, when these commandments were first given, the Jews were so careful not to break it that they would avoid saying God's name at all. Which probably isn't what God was intending, but it gives some idea of the reverence or respect that they had for God's name, and the seriousness with which they took this instruction. Now, just a quick note here. Some people may say that God's real name in the Bible is actually Yahweh, and so using the word God isn't blasphemy because you're not using the name Yahweh in vain. This is an interesting point, but then it raises another question. If Yahweh is God's name, then why don't most people who believe in God refer to him as Yahweh in general? If God is the most common name we use for him, then we should treat God as a name in terms of the respect we give it. So the first question that comes out of this is, if the Bible is so clear about it, then why are these expressions so common? Firstly, it's a bit surprising given the focus recently in Western culture on being so careful about what you say, and making sure what you say doesn't offend this group or that group. And given there are quite a lot of Christians in the world, you would think people would want to be more careful that they're not offending them. Secondly, these expressions have been around for a long time and appear to date back to when Western culture was almost exclusively Christian. So possibly these expressions actually had sincere beginnings. In fact, quite a few prayers in the Bible start with the phrase, "Oh my God." Psalm 102 verse 24, David says, "Oh my God, I say, take me not away in the midst of my days." But the expression isn't used as just a standalone throwaway line. It's part of a sincere prayer. David is begging God to be with him. There are also many similar expressions to this phrase, such as when Solomon was praying in 2 Chronicles 6 verse 42. "O Lord God, do not turn away the face of your anointed one." So if used in the context of an authentic prayer to God, even if it's just a quick one, there would be no problem. And we know there's nothing wrong with short prayers. In Nehemiah 2 verse 4, Nehemiah says a prayer to God in between the king asking him a question and him responding. So he certainly wouldn't have had time for much more than, "Oh my God, help me." And here's potentially where the issue comes in. Where do you draw the line between blasphemy and a genuine prayer to God? This is a bit of a gray area and really comes down to what you're thinking at the time and if you're being mindful of what you're saying. But if you're just using a common cliched phrase, then chances are you probably aren't thinking or sincerely talking to God. So possibly a few hundred years ago, when it was much more common to talk about God every day, these kind of expressions slipped in as shortened forms of a prayer or genuine references to God. But then over the years, they become these careless explanations that have nothing to do with God at all. Another gray area is using terms like gosh or geez as a replacement for the words God and Jesus. This is probably even more difficult to nail down, but these words are euphemisms for the real thing, and their similarity to the original phrase is so obvious that there's no mistaking it. So using a phrase that's slang for blasphemy doesn't seem to be much better. Probably better just to avoid the phrase altogether. In conclusion, if you're a follower of Christ, we have a duty to do what we can to bring glory and honor to God's name. The first line of the Lord's Prayer says, "Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name." Hallowed means revered and respected, and so we must strive in our lives and our words to contribute to the solution, not the problem, of the rampant disrespect of God's name in popular culture.